Hi, good morning, everyone, and good evening for those who are in the other time zones. Welcome today for this Facebook Live session organized by JSI, PFSCM, Crown Agents, EPN, and it's the fifth Facebook Live session. And we thank you for those who have been following up this session. Hi everyone. Sorry again. Technology. So I was struggling to see if you guys can hear me, and I'm glad to be joining four wonderful ladies, experts in supply chain, to continue this Facebook live series and session. And today we'll be focusing on localization, supply chain localization best practices. Good morning for those who are in the East, and the evening for the rest. So this is the fifth session, and we had already done four other sessions. The first one was on supply chain best practices, and then we did another one on patient-centric supply chains, and another one on traceability and quantification. So this is a good follow-up of all those four great sessions, and I'd like to welcome everyone today to discuss localization in health supply chains and the best practices. So today we have four experts. To begin with, I would like to start introducing our panelists. The first one is Erin Schneider. So Erin works with PFSCM, and she is the CFO as well. And she has been working with PFSCM for quite some time. She has worked in several countries, including Angola, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and at PFSCM, PFSCM is a 4PL, a procurement agency for government and donors. And PFSCM, so 90% of what PFSCM was actually is destined for Africa. So we put the good work that PFSCM has been doing to continue to run supply chains in Africa. They've covered several programs, including COVID-19, HIV, TB, malaria. So we look forward to hearing all the great work that they are doing and picking up on the best practices around localization. And moving to the next organization, which is Crown Agents. So we have two experts from Crown Agents. To beginning with, we have Giovanna Rigal. She's a principal consultant from Crown Agents. And Crown Agents is a non-profit international organization, again, focused in improving health supply chains in Africa. They focus on making sure that we have patient-centric supply chains, building capacity, digitization of health supply chains, and building out on. And so because of Giovanna's excellent work and commitment, they've been able to be awarded in the last two recent years the best third sector project by SIPS. And prior to that, Giovanna also worked with the DHL, providing services for pharmaceutical and customer supply chains. So welcome, Giovanna, to today's session. Also, we look forward to hearing the best practices from Crown Agents. The third expert today is Mushaneta Monzora from Crown Agents again. She started her work in Zimbabwe as a pharmacist and did some great work. And currently, she is the country manager in Zimbabwe. One of her great achievements was helping to transform what was then the government central medical stores for Zimbabwe into the national, now taking the private sector as the national pharmaceutical company of Zimbabwe. So welcome, Mushaneta. We're looking forward to hearing the great work that you're doing, implementing the health supply chain innovations in Zimbabwe, mainly focusing on localization as well. So the third organization today that we'll be speaking to is EPN, represented by Suzanne Duff. Suzanne holds a doctorate in pharmacy. She has been working with EPN since 2014. Again, she plays the role as a technical lead or technical advisor there, helping with building health supply chains, especially around group purchasing country organizations, which support more than 120 FBOs across the East African continent. So again, we welcome you, Suzanne, to speak more about that, and we hope to hear as well the best practices that you guys have been doing. So maybe I will also introduce myself. My name is Harrison Mariki, and I also work for a local organization here in Kenya and Tanzania called inSupply Health. And what we do is we co-create together with our partners health supply chain interventions that really are focused in improving healthcare, especially focusing on the patients. So not taking so much more time of your time, I'd like to jump right into it. And we are going to start with our first round of questions for our experts. And the first question is, we'd like to hear from each one of you just one, in terms of localization of health supply chains, what do you think is a best experience from the work that you are doing, and why you think that is? So we'll start with Erin Schneider. Please welcome and say hi to everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Harrison. I appreciate it. So this is really exciting, and I'm kind of nervous, so please bear with me if I stumble over some of my words. For us, for PFSCM, pre-qualification is really one of the critical interventions that we see ticks a lot of best practice boxes. For us, it expands the supplier base, which helps us with risk mitigation. It helps us to develop sources of supply closer to demand, which in turn reduces supply chain costs, and it helps to minimize the global carbon footprint. Both of things we're really interested in terms of sustainable supply chains. So basically, by pre-qualifying vendors, PFSCM is working with vendors to educate them about global standards for procurement and distribution. We're helping them to identify opportunities for improvement, and hopefully we're inspiring them to achieve compliance in order to help expand their market share. Expanding market share ultimately boosts a vendor's bottom line, and we hope that it also has the knock-on effect of boosting local economies. By expanding that pool of quality compliant, reputable vendors, we stimulate competition, and we reduce risk of over-reliance on any one supplier, something that we've all seen as a particular challenge given the situation with COVID. In tapping into more locally based vendors, we can also minimize challenges that you normally face in international procurement. So things like production delays, changes in shipping lead times, customs importation issues. And again, coming back to that fact that if you send fewer international shipments, then you're continuing to lessen that carbon footprint. So most importantly, I think we're trying to focus on making sure that we get life-saving commodities to areas that really need them. And we can do that easier with lots of local vendors. So when we do our pre-qualification exercise, what we're looking at in terms of our MQAS compliant pre-qualification audit, I think I got all the initials and all that stuff in the right order. Anyway, the pre-qualification audits that we do, we look at lots of different dimensions for those suppliers. We look at quality management, we look at organizational structure, documentation management, record keeping, self-inspection adherence, even security procedures. We look at how a vendor handles different things like recalled and rejected goods. We also look at their compliance to WHO good storage and distribution practice guidelines and the use of ISO quality controlled labs for product testing. What we do with this is after we complete our audit, we actually go ahead and assign a vendor a specific rating. And that rating for us provides guidance on which products and services PFSCM can procure from that vendor. What we do then is we provide recommendations to the vendor on how they can improve their rating. And the goal is to work together to improve the rating of the vendor and give them hopefully more access to international buyers or incentive to get more orders from PFSCM. Ultimately, what we're looking to achieve is not only just adding more vendors to this pool to mitigate our own risks, but also to build capacity and knowledge transfer to local vendors to improve their processes and compliance with international standards. And we hope to develop lasting long-term relationships with those vendors to engage more proactively with them in the future to, again, continue to support international quality compliance. That would be.
Thank you so much, Erin. So I like what you talked about, and it seems like is making us all well prepared, which is very relevant, especially with the experience. Over to you, Evan.
Thanks, Harrison, and thank you for the event. It's great to be part of this forum today. So based on my learning through the years, we think of VMI, or vendor managed inventory, as a streamlined approach to order management, which involves a close collaboration with suppliers or vendors. So it is about changing the traditional model from by switching the order management capabilities and responsibilities from the client to the suppliers. So when designing a VMI solution, client and suppliers tend to work really closely together to align their operational plans and streamline the whole operational flow end to end. And they usually do this by building on effective technology. Now, this creates direct value through the increased information system, and also in some cases through reduced storage and distribution costs from the maximized efficiency. Also, the resulting process governance helps increase the focus on inventory control by the personnel, which is a critical factor in increasing or let's say minimizing the risk of stockouts in country and overall uncertainty. Now, in all cases, when we think of VMI, we generally refer to a order management standardization process of some sort. And this can be achieved working with the suppliers at multiple levels. So usually it's regional, national, sometimes sub-national. And we do this by aiming at achieving integration across the three levels. And that will generally depend on the degree of complexity within the supply chain network. And we have multiple examples of this throughout our project experience. So we know that a solution, a VMI solutions, for example, in South Sudan, will be very different from a solution in Sierra Leone. So this is very important. It's about maintaining that flexibility in the approach and work out to really respond to the local needs. In this sense, I like to identify VMI as one option on the client-supplier management spectrum, relationship management spectrum. As you may identify multiple variations of the model, so not necessarily one fits all solution. So it is important that it is tailored. And as such, it's always fundamental to go through a very thorough assessment first of the real country situation before adopting one or the other option. And I think that is actually the very beauty of the model. So for example, in some cases, you may find that building a VMI solution around a local strategic pharmaceutical company may work, but in other cases, that may not be the right option, and you may instead opt for a third-party driven solution, as in the case of 4PL, 5PL logistics service providers, which can briefly announce the management of the logistics and the government. So this really offers multiple opportunities to strengthen local operations and local businesses, particularly with you encouraging more cooperation between the private and public sector.
Thank you so much, Giovanna, for talking about the VMIs and how the context differs between different countries and you are addressing that. I think now we can move on to Mucha and Suzanne.
Thank you. So at Crown Agents, we believe partnering with the private sector accelerates self-sufficiency and prosperity. And coming from Zimbabwe, coming from Africa, Zimbabwe in particular, the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on the health supply chain system has reminded me once again of the importance of community engagement. Instead of a diversified supply chain, there is dependence and attention on one main system, the government medical stores, and this to the detriment of the private sector, which is the community. This focus was great when we were starting out 30 to 40 years ago, but I believe we need to refocus. To me, localization is the community engagement and empowerment, and this means partnering with the private sector to strengthen local supply chains. The extent of this partnering is, of course, much dependent on is context specific, much dependent on the country, the geography, the level of development, the maturity of the health supply chain system, and the socio-economic and political environment. There are many ways we can engage with the private sector, contracting or collaborating. These, if well managed, often lead to increase the efficiencies, access, and quality medicines and medical products. And of course, a robust supply chain system. Governments and development partners should come together and work on mechanisms and policies to actually work with the private sector to improve their performance over time. The polarized focus on the government medical stores or purely public systems has led to shortages and overpricing in the private sector. And when these systems fail and the private sector tries to pivot to come to the aid of government, especially when there are pandemics or outbreaks, it becomes very difficult. For example, here in Zimbabwe, we had a situation at the beginning of the pandemic when a box of 50 face masks were going for, we should ordinarily retail at $3 to $5 US, we're actually selling for $100 United States for a box. That's sort of like, holding the public at ransom. And you find that where funding was available, but they were limited to no stocks on the ground and no regional capacity or warehouses to fall back on. Couple that with the fact that China was in lockdown, universities were roped in to start producing things like hand sanitizers, personal protective equipment. But of course, this was not an ideal situation. And this was caused because over time, the private sector had been ignored, sidelined, interrupted, and had become incapacitated. This situation was compounded by international manufacturing hubs pivoting to their own countries, leaving Africa out in the cold, and Africa with no regional capacity or warehouses to fall back on.
So,
sorry.
It's okay, Musha. I think we'll get back to you to hear more about that. I wanted to give some chance to Suzanne to tell us more on how EPN is helping to organize the private sector, which you just mentioned about, and helping them negotiate. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Harrison. EPN, the Ecumenical Pharmaceutical Network, because I think this isn't very spelled out. I would firstly like to clarify that the localization of the supply chain can be local or global, and local for EPN and in our East African Pool Procurement Initiative means within the East African region, and global turns to suppliers from outside that region. And the final objective for our initiative is to reduce supply chain costs and to increase affordability of products at health facility level and ultimately impact the patient's healthcare outcomes. We have two approaches. One, the products that the DS in common are procured under a centralized approach where EPN plays a central role in the joint pre-qualification of suppliers, the tender process, the supplier selection, the negotiation, thereby also involving all the QA representatives from the member DSOs in a technical working group. And thereby we can increase the buying power a lot. In the decentralized approach, the less common product, the price information is shared among the DSOs, and the negotiations can also be done one for another in case suppliers offer different prices for the same products to different DSOs. So our aim is to increase the availability and reduce the product cost, and the savings will benefit the patients in the end. Since COVID, we have also developed some emergency procurement. Time is up, huh?
Yeah, I wanted to be respectful of the time of those who are watching us, and apologies, Suzanne. I know.
Okay, let me just wrap up that in the long term, we aim to raise the standards of all our DSOs because they have different levels. Some are very small, some are bigger, so that all can achieve international certification and whilst increasing the quality of affordable medicines in the church health facilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. So maybe just to reiterate what everyone said, I picked up from Erin that doing the vendor selection closer to where the communities are needed is important, especially with the current situation that really played a big part. I picked up from Joanna that when you're doing vendor management, vendor inventory management, you can take on the role which usually is done by the buyer in doing all the inventories. But if you're using, when you couple it with technology, then that role can change, and it offers good collaboration, which improves efficiency. I picked up from Chanetta that community engagement is really, really important. That's where really localization is. And finally, from Suzanne, she mentioned how important the private sector is, and that it's not good to leave them aside, and it's important the work that they are doing in terms of mobilizing them, and it helps even to bring back the power to the sector in terms of negotiating the prices. That also helps them to save the clients. So I wanted to thank everyone who was able to participate today in today's session. Please, before you sign off out of Facebook, I would like to hear where everyone was listening to. So if you could just type that out in the chat, let us know where you are. That will be great. Also, we will be organizing all this information into a blog post that will follow right after this. After this session, so look out for that if you want to hear more. And this conversation will continue in all our channels, in LinkedIn, Twitter, for all the organizations, inSupply Health, PFSCM, Crown Agents, and EPN. Please follow us. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.